I think Islam hates us.
They have done nothing except wreak havoc and terror for our faith and our religion.
When we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad.
Foundations of society are fragile. We must be the shepherds of our own civilization.
Anyone answers either yes or no without making necessary distinctions, both are not telling the truth. They're lying.
Father, we pray that your word will become a hammer that breaks rocks into pieces. That you will raise up in this nation pulpits and prophets that will call the nation back to repentance.
Will you distance yourself from those who think differently, or will you join us at the table and talk about what is really important? This is the al-maidah initiative, conversation without compromise.
So to kind of introduce the premise here, right? This is part of a sort of series of episodes we're doing with Muslim imams. We're talking about various issues in regards to Christianity and Islam. And today we are talking about the afterlife in Christianity and Islam. Mm-hmm. So tell me exactly, you're an imam, right?
Yes. I'm currently a volunteer imam. I don't hold an official position with any mosque or organization. I lecture throughout the city at various mosques. I lecture regularly and lead the Friday prayer, and so I deliver a sermon and lead the prayer. Community members contact me, regarding religious advice and counseling, and so I do act as an imam in the community. I held an official imam position in 2015-16 in Kent. And I also worked as an Islamic school principal from 2017 to 2019, actually till summer this year. This previous year was my last school year with Islamic school. And so outside of that work, I still serve as a religious figure, primarily in the South Seattle community, but I go to all the mosques throughout King County. I've driven to south as far as Tacoma, and I've lectured there, and I've gone as far north as Linwood, and I've spoken there. I've spoken at the UW Islamic House, at the MSA, the UW, and so yeah, I do serve as an imam.
And was that what your time in Yemen was about? Was that training for that? Or?
Yes, it was. I spent about 5 years in Yemen, a year after high school. And so I learned Arabic there. I memorized the majority of the Quran in Yemen. And I completed like about a 4-year program, kind of like a bachelor's program in Yemen there. Then I traveled to Egypt. With my wife and kids. I got married in Yemen and I had 2 kids.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, me and my wife and kids moved to Egypt. And we spent about a year and a half there. There I completed my memorization of the Quran. Took a few extra courses on the interpretation of the Quran and Arabic. And then I moved to the United States once. I moved back here once my wife got her visa process completed. And that was in 2014. So we moved back to the U.S. in 2014.
And so did you meet your wife in Yemen? Or?
Mm-hmm. Yep, she's born and raised in Yemen.
Okay.
Yep.
So would she be from Yemeni origin or Somali origin?
She is from Somali origin, but her family has been living in Yemen for over 30 years.
Wow, okay.
And so her culture and her language is Yemeni, but her parents are from Somalia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you speak, as well as having Quranic Arabic, do you then speak some Yemeni Arabic as well?
I do, yeah. That's the primary dialect that if I was to speak like with the modern Arabic accents, that was the only accent. That would be the only accent I can actually use. I struggle understanding Egyptian accent, although I've been there. Their accent is so much faster and just very, very different.
So having an organization called the al-maidah initiative,
mm-hmm.
the best part about it is people ask me all the time, how do you pronounce that?
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell them it doesn't matter, because wherever you go in the Arab world, someone will tell you you're saying it wrong.
Yeah. yeah. So, the Hamza, that's the tricky one, right? The little letter where you say the E in English. So the Ma is pretty obvious. The E, sometimes people might pronounce it as a Ya. So they might say al-maidah instead of Ida,
Yep.
And then just accents, just this pronunciation of the letters also differ. And the speed of, how people talk. Yemen is very slow. And so it's easier to catch on. Whereas the Egyptian accent is very fast. I actually struggled to like adjust to Egyptian, culture and speech when I first moved there.
The official way to say this properly is to imagine you're watching like a Gulf airline commercial.
Okay.
And how they would say it.
Yeah.
And that's more or less the accent it's set in.
Yeah. Okay.
So give me the kind of overview of how you would describe the concept of the afterlife in Islam.
The afterlife in Islam, if I was to kind of summarize it, it's accountability. And that's really the main accountability and reward. I would say that's kind of the main objective of the afterlife. And so, we believe that a common term that Muslims will use is that this life is a life of work and no reward. So meaning that, in this world, we're supposed to do good deeds and abstain from bad deeds and obey God and find, the truth about God and pursue God and follow that, that path through the prophets that God sent, and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, being the last of them. And so this is the journey of life. It's a life of discovering God and connecting with him and finding the truth about our purpose in life and serving God according to his wills and command. And so now the afterlife is a life of reward and compensation. And so there's a whole journey that starts from the moment of death and until people enter hell and heaven. And so, yes, we believe in hell and heaven. And I think that's something that, we strongly share with the Christian faith. So, we believe that the entire period of the afterlife is supposed to be for accountability and reward. A common verse that the Quran uses to referring to the afterlife is, whoever does an atom's size of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's size of bad will see it as well. And so the afterlife is a life where nothing you did in this world is insignificant. Even a charity you give, a smile you give, that you to another person, a kindness you show to another animal, a gesture, a kind word you might say, a bad word you might say that you think maybe was insignificant and maybe it hurt somebody or it was something harmful, is where we believe the afterlife is going to put all that on display. This is what you've earned. This is what you've done. Okay. Now you are accountable. What are your reasons? Why did you fall to this sin? Why did you do these things? And so we're held accountable, and then reward is given after. And so we believe that everybody will have some amount of bad deeds and good deeds. But whoever has more good deeds than bad deeds will enter heaven. And those who have more bad deeds than good deeds will enter hell. And so that is kind of the afterlife in a nutshell is accountability and reward.
So break it down for me when you talk about more good deeds than bad deeds entering heaven, more bad deeds than good deeds entering hell.
Yeah.
In your perspective, are those things kind of like permanent fixtures, or can hell be a temporary measure for someone?
So this is a big discussion in Islamic theology. Is hell eternal, and is it permanent? And is heaven eternal, and is it permanent? And so the overall mainstream opinion of Muslim scholars is that yes, both hell and heaven are eternal, and they don't end. There is a secondary opinion, a minority opinion that believes that hell is eventually going to end, although it will exist for a very, very long time, that eventually it has an end. And so that is the second opinion with regards to hell, but it's not with regards to heaven. Heaven is an eternal reward and bliss for the people in it. Now, with regards to deeds and people who enter it, and will the people being in hell or heaven be there for eternity? With regards to the people who are in heaven, they're there for eternity. So that's not. I think there's a lot of discussion, at least to my knowledge, and dispute about that. With regards to the people of hell, Muslims agree that the condition to enter heaven is to have faith in God and His messenger. So you must find the truth about God. Associating partners with God or rejecting the prophets of God will condemn a person to hell for eternity. God will not admit a person into heaven with that sin. And so that's the ultimate sin that Islam says will condemn a person to hell for eternity, is the disbelief in God or the disbelief in God's messengers, or, kind of like disbelief in like the fundamental belief of faith. And so once a person has these, faith in these, in this kind of foundation, they will eventually enter heaven. They will eventually enter heaven, and any punishment they might receive in the afterlife. And I should also share that, the punishment of the afterlife is in three stages actually. There's punishment in the grave before the day of judgment begins. And so a person is questioned in the grave, and they receive some form of punishment in the grave for their sins, or reward for their good deeds. And then you have the day of judgment, which is a day where people are resurrected, and it's a day of accountability before God. And so people's good deeds and bad deeds will be presented to them in books. And it will be presented to them in also physical forms, as some of our scholars have described. But regardless, their good deeds are presented to them. And so now the day of judgment is accountability. And so people are held accountable. And so the first requirement for a person to kind of enter into the stage of more good deeds than bad deeds, or more bad deeds than good deeds, is they must have this foundation of belief in God and his messengers. Once they have this foundation, we call it iman. You have iman, you have faith. Once you have iman and your iman is accepted and true, then you get into the next stage of accountability, which is the stage of accountability for your bad deeds and good deeds. As for those who don't have faith in God and his messenger, they lived a life where they completely rejected God and his messenger, then God has no reward for them because they lived a life without giving any faith to him. And so we believe that those people are the first category of people to be entered into hellfire and their judgment to be passed. So that's the first group that enter hellfire. May God guide us to the truth and not make us among those people. And so that's the first group. The second group now are those who have faith and they do believe in God. But now they've committed good deeds. They've done, and they have their share of bad deeds. And then at that time, God will bring their deeds onto a scale. And God can forgive whatever he wants after this point, except the rights of people. The rights of people have to be repaid. So personal injuries done to people, crimes against people, financial injuries to people, theft, any type of injustice, even verbal injustices towards people, an insulting word to another person, or a racist remark to another person, or to make anyone feel bad through our words, actions, gestures, and so on. Those will not be forgiven. God will serve justice between people. Because God can forgive his rights, but he will not forgive the rights of people. People have to forgive their rights. And so a scale is brought, and so God puts the good deeds. This is referred to in the Quran very often throughout the Quran. Is that there will be a scale of fairness and justice placed in front of people, and their good deeds will be placed on one side, and the bad deeds will be placed on the other side. And if the good deeds outweigh the bad deeds, they're admitted into heaven. If the bad deeds outweigh the good deeds, then they're admitted into hell until they're cleansed from their sins, until they've served their time. And now once they've served their time, then they're admitted into heaven, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, states that whoever has an atom size of faith will enter heaven. Right? Like whoever has some form of faith in God and his messenger will enter heaven. Whoever has an atom size of good will eventually enter heaven. And so hell is supposed to be a place for those who are evil, to be those who are like purely rejected God and his messenger. As for those who have sins with good deeds mixed, they will serve their time, and then God will admit them into heaven. There is another group that we believe also God can grant to as a favor to people, is that he doesn't even hold them accountable. for their sins and bad deeds. That He just forgives them for all their bad deeds, and He rewards them for their good deeds and admits them into hellfire, into heaven. I'm sorry. So we do believe that there's this category. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings, said there are 70,000 people of this category, and then later he said that God had bestowed upon him increased that amount for him, where with each individual there'd be another 70,000 that God would admit into heaven without any punishment or accountability. But we don't, as Muslims, nobody's guaranteed that. Nobody can be sure, like, oh, I got it. Nobody's even sure that their faith is completely accepted and valid in the sight of God. Who knows? Maybe our faith is flawed. Maybe we don't die upon true faith. Maybe we fall into misguidance at the end of our lives. Nobody can be sure. And so we always ask God to give us steadfastness, to take us upon guidance, to take us in the state of righteousness. But yeah, that's, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, that's helpful. So when you talk about the resurrection, like what do you mean by that? Is that like a spiritual existence? Is that a physical existence?
It's a physical existence. It's a physical existence where God will bring the soul back with the body, and He will bring down rain that will bring the bodies from the earth. And so and the example that God uses is like that of the growth of plants, that He will regrow humankind like the way plants grow from the earth, indicating that the belly of the earth is where we're buried, right? Or we're buried under the earth or in the earth, and so God will resurrect us from the earth. Our souls will reunite with our bodies, and then our presence on the day of judgment is a physical presence, and our reward and punishment, our reward in heaven or punishment in hell, may God protect us from that, is a physical reward and a physical experience, and the punishment is a physical punishment that a person receives.
So, is there like a agreement or consensus on like where that is? Like, is it on Earth? Is it on a different planet? Is it in another dimension? Or no one knows?
This is very interesting. First of all, we do say it's in a different type of dimension. I would say that's the best term. Maybe it is in a different dimension. That hell and heaven. The mainstream opinion of Islam is that hell and heaven have been already created. And so, with that being said, that means that they're not physically present in our world. And that they're in a different dimension, as you said. But they have, if you were to look into it and you were to analyze the verses and the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, hadith are his statements, there is some indication that they have some type of connection to our world. And that's indicated. And I don't want to go too much into that, but there is some indication that it's connected to our world. But no, hell and heaven are primarily in a different dimension than our world.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was more or less what I thought it was. So, so reality is physical forever, but not like here. Is there does the earth get destroyed? Does it get?
The earth will be reformed on the day of judgment. When the day of judgment time begins, we talk about, I think Christian faith as Armageddon, right, and the end of the world. And so Muslims have a similar faith about that. And so we believe that the earth will be reformed, and there will be a land of resurrection will be on earth. And so people will be gathered on earth. And then they will see hell and heaven will be made present, and it will be brought forth. God says that heaven will be brought forth. And so, yes, reality will reform. Actually, I think that would be the best term to say. The whole existence, our whole reality will change, whereas the physical earth will be reformed. The sun will die, and the same with the moon. The mountains will be dust. The sea will become a blazing fire. And so that's resurrection. And there's a whole, kind of like, set of verses that describe that, and words of the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, that describe resurrection and the events that take their place. And so one of the qualities is that the earth will reform, The sun will become extinguished, but its physical existence will still be there, but its light will be gone. Same with the moon, and the earth, and like I described about the earth, hell and heaven are brought forth. People will be able to see it, and so reality will change, and it will be remade.
So, kind of final question for this before we switch gears here.
Yeah.
Is there a change in people's relation to God after the resurrection? Like, are you interacting with God in a more direct way than you would have been on earth, or is it still sort of an unseen sort of relationship?
That's a very interesting question. There are verses that directly speak about that. Also statements about the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, and all of these verses and hadith, they indicate they are actually very clear that no, people will see God. And now seeing God is a reward for the righteous. And it is actually the greatest reward in heaven. And so we can only imagine if all the beauty in existence is from God, and God is the eternally beautiful, the ever beautiful. And that's how we call God. He's Jameel. He's the most beautiful. And he's the all merciful. And to experience that, we believe will be the greatest pleasure and reward that the people of heaven will receive. And to be deprived of that will be the greatest punishment that the people of hellfire will receive. And so, yeah, we people will see God. But this isn't for everyone. It will only be for the righteous, those that God is pleased with. And those who enter heaven, they will see, the righteous will see him on the day of judgment. And then in heaven, they will see him every Friday, as the Prophet Muhammad describes, that God will meet with the people of heaven every Friday, and he will speak to them directly.
So when you say only for the righteous, does that mean there's sort of subgroups in heaven, or you talk?
I think a righteous is a broader term for everyone in heaven.
Okay. So only for the people in heaven. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to sort of show you the history of in the Bible how this part of how the idea of the afterlife comes in Christianity. Some things are going to be similar, some things are going to be different. There's not a ton of reference to the afterlife early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at say Abraham and Moses and Noah, no one there is really talking about the afterlife a great deal,
okay, except
for the fact they're talking about relationship to God directly.
Okay. And is this is there a difference between the first, the New Testament and the Early Testament with regards to this?
There's not, but there's less description in the Early Testament. In the Old Testament, in the Torah, the prophets, it's discussed less, but it's still discussed.
Mm-hmm.
The premise is kind of the same.
Okay.
Right? And the central premise is kind of what we touched on last, is that the ultimate goal of this is union with God.
Mm-hmm.
That everything else is secondary to the fact that to have a living trust and relationship with God is the central goal of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who trust him, there's kind of eternity there. So one thing that's really interesting is the earliest reference we get to the resurrection specifically in the Bible is actually from the prophet Job.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going through immense suffering, because Job's a prophet in Islam as well, right?
Right, yep.
So
we call him Ayub, by the way. Yep, Ayub.
So Job is going through this immense period of suffering, and he's complaining about what's happening to him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this moment where he has this clarity when he's pushed by his friends for why he has hope in the midst of suffering. He says this: "Oh, that my words were written in a book." This is Job 19:23 in the Bible. "Oh, that my words were written in a book. They were inscribed in a book or that with an iron pen and lead they were engraved in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the end, at the last, he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eye shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. So Job is saying that after I've died, after my flesh has passed away, yeah, God's going to stand on the earth. I'm going to stand on the earth as a physical being, and I'm going to look at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next kind of big sort of afterlife reference specifically is in the book of Daniel, who's a prophet, he's a Jewish prophet living in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
And God says to Daniel, at that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who is charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as has never been seen. There was a nation till that time, but at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So there we've got a clear dichotomy. Not only do the believers, those who have a relationship with God, get to be with him forever and shine like the sun, those who reject him have everlasting contempt. Right? So you kind of have this idea of resurrection. The one thing that Islam has that Christianity doesn't have is this idea of the punishment of the grave, or the rewards of the grave. So the idea in the Bible is that as soon as the believer dies, they go to be with God directly
I see.
in spirit, waiting for the physical resurrection. And then the unbeliever is held in what would be a place called Sheol, waiting for the same resurrection to the lake of fire, is what Jesus calls it, right? And
is that like, what is that? Is that like a different world? What is that? How do you describe that? And in Islam, it was like the grave is its own world with its own reality. And so how can I better understand that?
Yeah, so I think this describing it as its own reality is somewhat is the right way to look at it. Another kind of dimension is the spirit world, right? So there's a place in the spirit world where people who are enemies of God wait sentencing, right? Think of it as the difference between like jail versus prison, right?
Yeah.
Jail, if you've committed a crime, you haven't been sentenced yet.
Yeah.
And then to be with God in spirit is to be waiting for your reward.
Yeah.
There's two different types of waiting.
Yeah.
And there's no and so for the believer there's no idea of punishment in the grave specifically. It's waiting for resurrection, right? You're with God. And the premise in the Christian mind, the way this hope comes from is essentially from the words of Jesus. So
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you say with regards to those who are with God, right, the believers, are is there any description of the rewards they receive outside of the unity with God? I understand that's kind of like the main reward, right? That's the primary, objective is to unite with God. And I think we share that, to unite with God, to discover God, that's the journey of life, and that's what you want in the hereafter. But outside of that, is there any mention of other rewards?
There's mention of rewards. It's never really named.
Okay.
Right. So there's never like you get a bigger house, you get more gold or anything like that. It's really there is a sense of level of reward for faithfulness, but it's not in the sense of like tangibly describe what it is, except that the one place in the Bible says, "No eye has seen, no heart of man imagined what God has in store for those who love Him." So the idea is like. It's like a Christmas gift. It's going to be great, but I'm not telling you what it is yet.
Yeah,
kind of
and we share that. There's also a similar statement by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. He quotes God. He says that God says, I have prepared for my righteous servants what no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, and has never occurred to any mind. And so we believe that the rewards of heaven, although they might be described through terminologies that are relative to our world, they're not. They don't represent our world. It's a whole different reality, and the experience of it is a whole different experience. But yes, please. So continue.
So for us, there's a time in the Bible where one of Jesus' friends died.
Mm-hmm.
He physically died, a man called Lazarus. And Jesus specifically avoided going to see him right away so that he would die.
Okay.
Because Jesus could have saved him from dying, but he waited. And so Lazarus' sister comes to see Jesus, and her name is Martha, and it says, Martha said, Jesus, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? So this is what he tells to Martha, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's telling her, if you trust me, you will live forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he clarifies what he means by this
Mm-hmm.
in the passage later, in verse 40 of chapter 11.
Mm-hmm.
It says, Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a clean cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. So Jesus is demonstrating what he means by the last day by literally bringing this guy back from the dead at this point here.
Yeah.
So the hope of the Christian is that in the same way Jesus raised Lazarus from his grave is the same thing we will one day experience. And it's just something that Jesus experiences himself. So in Christianity, we believe that Jesus died on the cross, but he didn't stay dead. 3 days later, Jesus himself rose from the dead. And when Jesus had risen from the dead, he actually appeared to his disciples. And what he said, and they were kind of all in a room together. And it says, as they were talking about these things, Jesus himself stood among them and said, peace to you. But they were startled and frightened and thought they saw a spirit. And he said to them, why are you troubled? Why do your doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that is I myself. Touch me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have. And when he had said these things, he showed his hands and feet. And while they still disbelieved for joy, and while marveling, he said to them, have you anything here to eat? So Jesus doesn't simply emerge from his grave in this sort of spiritual fashion, but says, look, I have flesh and bones.
Yeah.
You have anything to eat? I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Right? He partakes in food with them and is tangible, right? So what we get from the life and teaching of Jesus is this tangible reality. So one big difference in Christianity and Islam, it's not a huge difference, but it is different, is that eternity is actually here on earth in the long run. And the way the final book of the Bible describes it is Revelation 21. It says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. So the idea is that Jesus secured our freedom from God's judgment if we trust in him, and then secured our resurrection by raising from the dead, so that our place is united with God forever on earth through relationship with him.
I see.
And so for the Christian, primarily good deeds are not the factor that get us in or out of eternity in the long run. We will be judged on those things, but the idea is that there are actually no amount of good deeds that could make us right with God. That God had to pay for us in order to secure his mercy. He had to be just. So through the death of Jesus, he wipes away our sins if we trust him. And the goal is to create trust and relationship between God and man. That if we trust him, he will make us more like him. He'll make us worthy of paradise through what he's done. But if we don't trust him, there's no amount of good we can do that makes up for us not having a living trust with God. And so we don't believe that there's any kind of like punishment after death for the Christian. Anyone who trusts in Jesus, their sin has been wiped out by the cross through his death and the resurrection, and that we dwell with him forever through that.
Okay. And so, and I understand that. And so, I think this, you actually answered part of the question I was going to ask, is about what is the motive Christians have to do good deeds and to abstain from bad deeds, right? For a Muslim, there are specific punishments for each bad deed. There's a specific reward that Allah mentions, or there's a general punishment that you fear, or a general reward that you hope for. And so in the Christian faith, how, what is kind of the motive? What motivates Christians to do good deeds and to abstain from bad deeds?
So that is a great question. I'm going to answer it right now. For those of you who are watching, you can join us on the after show. I'm going to talk about this question. Okay. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to the Al-Maidah Initiative podcast. We will be back next week. Please like and subscribe for more content every Wednesday. It helps more people see these videos and join in this important conversation. If you want to see more of this conversation, check out the after show right here, or you can watch last week's episode.
This British guy costume is really hot. Can you bring me some water? على فكرة احنا اسمنا المائدة يا اخي، جيبونا اكل حاجة، جيبونا تميز فول يا هو.